All right, recording started.
Okay. Just so that you have an idea of what my study is, so that way you know, I want to look into the effectiveness of training by fire versus training, like sit-down, thorough training that's done in a certain amount of time to increase employee productivity, basically.
Okay. So can I ask a clarifying question? So are you thinking more like on-the-job training versus formal classroom training?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So to kind of give it a context just a little bit, in the work that I do right now, individuals are paid on a 40-hour-a-week basis. However, they're required to do a productivity insurance billing basis as well. So out of the 40 hours, 28 of those hours have to be able to be billed through an insurance. And right now, from the moment of day of orientation to when they're full capable of billing, it's usually 4 months. So that 4 months, the company actually loses income because they're not building up their productivity fast enough. So what I want to know is if there's the trial by fire, which is what they're doing now, the on the job, going out shadowing, and that's all the training they get, versus sit down. This is the computer program that we use. This is how it's done. This is what you can bill for, and then have them shadow. If that can happen in half the amount of time. So like instead of 4 months, 2 months.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to start the questions. So question 1 is your project worth doing and why?
I think it's worth doing because in the current field that I'm in right now, we're being audited by almost all insurances, and what they're requiring is to either have us give back money because individuals are billing for things that aren't supposed to be billed for, or what's happening is they start out really small in that 4 month period, billing maybe 2 hours, an hour and a half, and then all of a sudden by month 4, they're billing 5 to 6 hours. So there's a discrepancy in that, and the insurance company doesn't see why that's happening. They just think that right off the bat, the individual should be billing at the full amount, whereas they're building up to it in the other sense. So this would allow us to be able to assign a client and have them bill from the full potential right from the get-go, as opposed to kind of gradually billing up to it.
Okay. So question 2, is your project congruent with your personal values? And if it is, what, if any, values do you hold that might actually conflict with what you are intending to do?
This one's a little bit tricky for me to answer because for me, it's the quality of the work is like really important. And I'm looking at it from a standpoint of it's mental health with children and adolescents. So for me, I want to provide the best quality of work for those individuals, no matter how much I'm billing for. So with my values, it's appropriate. However, I also have to look at it from the insurance side of it. And the insurance, yeah, they care about the quality of work, but what they actually care about is how much we're billing. And if they feel that it's billing too much out, it's actually kind of like they'll pull back on it and they won't allow us to see the client as much. I'm not sure if that quite answers it, but for me, my own personal values is it's the quality of work that's more important. And if we can train individuals to provide that positive quality of work right from the get-go, then it's going to show the insurance company that our services are truly needed in the community. So.
Okay, that's awesome. So moving on to question 4, or question 3, sorry. Do you have the needed expertise to carry out the study, do you think? And if not, who might you need to actually ask for help from?
Partly yes and no. So I have the background history of our program, the CBHI program, which is Children's Behavioral Health Initiative. I have the background information, and because I've done the work, I know exactly what's needed on that end. The only part that I don't quite understand is the onboarding part, which is the training part, which actually for practicum, I kind of created this onboard training based on the CBHI model, but I had to seek out somebody who had been doing the training for a really long time. to understand like what it is they go through. So I still kind of need help in regards to creating that program. I tried a dry run of it with one of our individuals, and it kind of did not work out well. So I really have to go back to those training individuals and get their opinion on how can I tweak this to fit the model that I'm looking for.
Okay, so
yeah.
I'm gonna expand on that question just a little bit. Going back to those individuals, what do you think is the failure that you might, I mean, not necessarily failure, but what do you think is the part that didn't work out so well that you might be able to address going forward to do another project?
Honestly, I think it's since I did the work myself, because I did in-home therapy, training and support, and mentoring. From the time I did it to now, the specs have changed. So I'm still going off of what the old specifications were for the job descriptions and the roles and what you could bill off of. So for me to try to train on the new specs that they created, that was where the disconnect was coming from, because there were things that I could bill for that they can't bill for now. So when I was doing that training, I would use those examples, but then I would be told, no, you can't do that anymore.
Okay.
So even though I've read the new specs and everything, I still kind of have that old mindset of when I used to do the job. So I think that's where the disconnect is for me, is still understanding the new specs versus the old specs.
Okay, so you're going to have to involve people in this study, obviously. Are you going to be able to give them information about what the study is involving? And if you are, how are you going to go about telling them? And how much detail are you going to go into?
So I think both the participants that are in it, as well as the company I work for, they kind of require us to tell them what the study is about to some extent. And I think the way that I would probably go about telling them would be more along the lines of, this study is to actually help you in your position, and it's to help you understand the position faster and more thorough. And that way you are more autonomous in the position, because that's kind of what sells everybody on the positions that we have. They're very autonomous positions in regards to, once you learn the job, you're on your own. You come in for staff meeting, training, and supervision. And that's like 3 hours a week that you're required to be in the office. The rest of the time, you work from wherever you want to work with, as long as you're seeing the client. So for them, that's kind of the selling point of, if you participate in this, you'll be on your own much faster than normal.
Okay.
So to an extent, I have to tell them, but I think I can kind of keep it to myself in regards to like the current outcomes of this study. So they don't always have to know of like, okay, this part is working well, but this part's not. I would kind of keep that until the end, I think.
Okay. So moving on to question 5, and just in the interest of time, because we don't have a whole lot of time for this interview, what are the benefits, do you think, going to be to the participants? Obviously, I think you just answered that a little bit, but you're going to need to be very thorough when you're convincing your IRB board about this. And are there any costs that are going to be involved for the participant themselves? So in terms of not just like monetary costs, but personal costs to them. And if there is it an equitable balance? So like, is the benefit as big as the cost?
So there's not going to be actually any cost, from what I can tell, to the participants, because they're training and they get paid for their training at the normal rate that they would get paid regardless. And it would be part of their orientation process that every employee has to go through anyways. It would just be a little bit more structured. So there's no cost to the participants, and it would benefit them because they would, like I said, they would be autonomous in a much faster time than what they are right now.
Okay. So I guess my next question is, do you think that there's going to be any risks for them in terms of actually participating into your project? And if there is there any potential for harm for any of the people that are involved?
No, not for this particular study. I think the only risk that might happen with this is if they don't understand the training and they don't speak up and ask questions, they could make mistakes. And what happens is we have what's called failed activities. So that's when billing doesn't go through for some reason. Those would be the only risks that might happen. But as supervisors, we work with them to prevent that from happening. So in regards to risk, I don't foresee any. Not to say that they're not ever going to happen, but
Okay. So moving on to a little bit of a different kind of line of questioning, just to kind of get at some other things. Do you think that you have a trusting relationship with the individuals in the study as a result of the participation in your research project? And if you don't, how are you going to go about developing that trust? What kind of specific steps will you need to take? And this is obviously different from just being their supervisor. This is part of the researcher and them actually being participants in your study.
so right now, knock on wood, I have the trust of anybody who would be in the research project. The individuals that we have in there right now, I mean, they wouldn't necessarily be part of it, but they would be the future employees that would be hired on at that time. The only situation where I would see where I would have to build the trust would be if I have employees coming from other locations, because we have 45 different programs through our agency, so I could be potentially training any number of employees, and they don't know who I am versus anybody else. So I think just letting them know that I'm there to, support them, to provide them with any type of, feedback or anything else like that is how I would be able to. And at my agency, as long as you have food, they love you. So I'd always make sure to have food.
There you go. That's the way to do it. It's usually the way to someone's heart. In terms of protecting confidentiality, how are you going to make sure that information is kept guarded and confidential?
So this part I haven't put a whole lot of thought into yet because I'm not sure we would be able to keep it confidential. The individuals who would be part of the study, their supervisors would know because we need them to also keep track of what they're billing out each week. But in regards to the overall company, I'm thinking that when I present it, I wouldn't give the participants names in regards to that part of it, but their immediate supervisors and the program directors are going to have to know because they're the ones who run the reports and everything. So that part is still kind of like in process in my mind because I'm not really sure how that would work.
Okay. What do you do if you find that one of your participants is doing something illegal or wrongful in terms of billing and or attempting to learn the work? What do you do in that case?
By law and ethically, I have to report them to the program director. I can't report them directly to any type of insurance company billing or anything like that. We have steps at our agency that if I find out, it goes to my boss, who then goes to their boss, and it goes up that way. But it has to go through the chain of command. I can't just go immediately to like the insurance company and say this person's fraudulently billing or whatever, anything like that.
Okay. What if you find out that someone was wronged by either a supervisor or the insurance company? Do you stand up and advocate for them as a part of the study, or do you kind of stand off to the side because really your job as part of the study is more of an observational?
I think with any supervisor who's actually involved with the participants in the study, whenever there's an issue with regards to insurance companies or whatnot, we're always on the phone with them advocating. If a person runs out of units or forgets to do a reauthorization, we actually call the insurance companies and we actually kind of, I don't want to say fight for the employee to get the extra time or get those services covered, but we do everything we can to support them because it's a stressful job. It's a very busy job. There's so many different aspects coming at you that, you're bound to forget something. So we do work with them on that. And if we can't, we just try to support them for the next time so that way it doesn't happen again.
Okay. All right, so the next question is, will the participants in your study be involved in the review and the critique of the analysis products or the drafts of your report? And can the participants actually veto any of the material in there?
I honestly can't answer this question yet, because I don't know how much of a say that they're going to be able to have in this, in regards to if they want to even be a part of it. That's their choice if they want to be. But in regards to like any veto power or anything, I don't know how that would look.
That's fair. That's fair. So next question, we'll just move on quickly. Who owns access to the data in the analysis documents? So is it you? Is it a funder? Is it a principal investigator? The organization? So like, will it be the job that you're conducting this at? And how are you going to ensure that it stays that way?
So anything that I do at my company belongs to my company. So if I do this research, it's their research. So my name would be on it, but it would be their research. Because they would they're signing off on it for me and they're allowing me to do it there. So whatever I do, they own basically.
Right.
So.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So once that we know that the company owns it, so once it's the final reports are in, your whole study is done, you found your answers, who controls the dissemination of the results?
I don't know.
Okay.
To be honest.
That's something to think about. That's something to think about in terms of the project and like how you're going to go about, kind of controlling that these are all valid questions.
Yeah,
so
I think the quality assurance people would probably look at this and then they would just go from there with it.
okay.
I honestly don't know the answer to that one.
All right. So what if you find out that then the results of your study are used to harm or wrong somebody else?
If that's the case, then I would put a stop to it with that individual or person or the whole study, depending on how many people. And I would actually talk to the QA people, the quality assurance people, as well as HR, and find out what it is we can do to debrief them. And then at that point, who knows if there's any type of like other compensation that needs to be done or anything like that. Hopefully, knock on wood, this particular assignment wouldn't have any involvement of harming anybody, because it's not literally involving the actions of somebody. It's how we're appropriately training them.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And are you going to try to establish an emotional relationship with the participants? And if so, what type?
Probably not, because I would not use individuals that I personally supervise, because there's already that supervisor-employee relationship there, and there's a level of a relationship that's more than what it would be if there was another supervisor's employee there. So I think to make sure that there's that separation at least, there wouldn't be anybody that I specifically supervise.
Okay. And the last, and I think one very important question is, what are you going to do to maybe avoid identifying too closely with the participants? Obviously, you've been in their shoes.
Yeah, so I would not use any type of personal examples in the situations, and I would come at it completely as if I really didn't know much, and I would come at it as a training department, and that's how I would look at it, and it would be a very, I don't want to say there's a wall up, but there would be that disconnect right there from this is what my experience was, or this is how I did it. It would strictly be, this is what you have to do, this is how your billing is done, etc. And you would learn from the people that you shadow on the personal experiences.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Is it okay if I reach out back to you with clarifying questions or anything like that? And obviously, I will provide, I'll definitely provide a transcript of this so that you can agree or disagree with the answers.
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.